on.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, the hearing will come to order.
Welcome to a meeting of the House Armed Services Subcommittee on Military Personnel. Today, the subcommittee will examine religious accommodations in the armed services, including the military services interpretation, enactment, and enforcement of religious accommodation statutory and regulatory guidance. Historically, the armed services have supported religious freedom and, when possible, accommodated service members' religious beliefs and practices. I believe we can maintain a proper balance between religious accommodations, which will promote military readiness, unit cohesion, and good order and discipline. This should not present challenges to the military services. Chaplains have always been vital to our military. I am very grateful the Chaplain School is located in the district I represent at Fort Jackson. One of the strengths of our military is its diversity with mutual respect, and as such, it has been important for Congress to work with the Department of Defense to ensure that appropriate statutory and regulatory guidance is in place in order for the services to meet the important spiritual and religious needs of our troops. Recognizing that there have been challenges in accommodating religious practices and beliefs, we have engaged in various efforts to clarify the role of religion in the military, prevent religious discrimination, and provide appropriate religious accommodations for those service members who seek it. Our goal today is to better understand how the Department of Defense has balanced the implementation of the religious accommodations policy with maintaining military readiness, unit cohesion, and good order and discipline. Before I introduce our panel, let me offer Congresswoman Susan Davis, the ranking member from California, an opportunity to make her opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to also welcome our witnesses today. Thank you very much for being with us. Today's hearing on the accommodation of religious beliefs, including the right to observe no religion at all by service members, is an important issue. Over the past several years, the committee has attempted to balance the accommodation of religious beliefs of service members and chaplains with the need for commanders to establish and to maintain good order and discipline among their ranks. It's especially difficult for military chaplains who face difficult and unique challenges, unlike our chaplains or our rabbis in communities where congregations are able to self-select where and whom they choose to receive their spiritual support. Military chaplains must provide spiritual care for all those who serve in the military, most of which may not share their particular faith or religious beliefs. This challenge has often created the perception that the Department of Defense or the services are prohibiting chaplains and service members from practicing the tenets of their faith. Often in these discussions, what is lost is a recognition that a military chaplain's responsibility is not just to his or her tenets of their faith and those that follow that specific faith, but we know that ultimately, responsibility of military chaplains and why we have chaplains in the uniform at all is to provide non-denominational, inclusive, spiritual support to all those in uniform and their families, regardless of their specific religious belief. Our armed forces is a reflection of our country which is comprised of individuals from all walks of religious beliefs to those who have no belief in a specific religion, including atheists and free thinkers. Our diversity is what makes our country stronger, and our ability to respect different cultures and beliefs, including religious beliefs, is the bedrock of our American values. We need to ensure that these values are upheld and protected for all service members and military clergy alike. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses.
Thank you, Ms. Davis, and I appreciate your commitment to our clergy serving in the military. I would like to welcome our distinguished witnesses, Ms. V. Penrod, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Military Personnel Policy, Chaplain Mark L. Tidd, Rear Admiral, Chief of Navy Chaplains, Chaplain Bobby Page, Brigadier General, Deputy Chief of Chaplains, U.S. Air Force, Chaplain Charles R. Bailey, Brigadier General, Deputy Chief of Chaplains, U.S. Army, Right Reverend James B. Magness, Captain Retired, U.S. Navy, Bishop Suffragan for the Armed Forces and Federal Ministries. And our last witness, who cannot be with us today due to unusual winter weather, a unique snowstorm from Florida in the southeast United States this week, was Mr. Douglas Carver. Chaplain, you Major General retired U.S. Army Executive Director of the North American Mission Board. We will enter his testimony for the record. I now ask unanimous consent that Congressman Robert Whitman of Virginia, Congressman Randy Forbes of Virginia, Congressman Dr. John Fleming of Louisiana, Congressman Steve Palazzo of Mississippi, Congressman Rich Nugent of Florida, Congressman Tim Hulskamp of Kansas, Congresswoman Vicki Hartzler of Missouri, Congressman Jim Brendenstein of Oklahoma, Congressman Mike Rogers of Alabama, Congressman Doug Lambert of Colorado, Congressman Bradley Byrne of Alabama, and Congressman Alan Nunley of Mississippi be allowed to participate and ask questions after all members from the subcommittee have had the opportunity to question the witnesses. Without objection, so ordered. In addition, I ask unanimous consent to enter the following statements into the record. From the Chaplains Alliance for Religious Liberty, from the Americans United for Separation of Church and State, from the American Civil Liberties Union, from the Anti-Defamation League, from the Sikh Coalition, from U.S. Army Major Kamal Kasi, from the Interfaith Alliance, from the Religious Action Center, from the Family Research Council, and from Congressman Doug Collins of Georgia. Without objection, so ordered. Ms. Penrod, we will begin with your testimony. We will follow with a statement from Admiral Tidd representing the chaplains, then to our non-governmental witnesses. As a reminder, keep your statements to 3 minutes. We have your written testimony for the record. Following your testimony, each member will participate in rounds of 3 minutes each until adjournment. And there's extraordinary times constraints. We've just learned that votes may be at 10:20, and certainly everyone will be given the opportunity to provide questions for the record. Ms. Penrod.
Yes. Good morning, Chairman Wilson, Ranking Member Davis, and distinguished members of this subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today. The Department places a high value on helping chaplains as well as military personnel and their families to observe the tenets of their faiths. As you now know, we have revised and published policy on the accommodation of religious practices within the military services to ensure the protection of rights of conscious members of the armed forces in accordance with the 2013 and 2014 National Defense Authorization Acts. Part of the delay in publication was necessary to incorporate the changes in law in the last two NDAAs. In response to concerns of the Congress, I conducted a teleconference with over 30 of our hardworking chaplains in the field. I asked if they were allowed to preach or practice according to the tenets of their faith. Their response was an overwhelming yes. They felt they were given the support they needed from command. When asked if they were forced to perform ceremonies that went against their faith, 100% said no. There were a few chaplains that felt some in leadership positions tend to be overly reactive to social media. However, almost all believed the key to a productive and trusting climate was good communication and continued training on the rights of chaplains, for not only the chaplains, but also for commanders. Our chaplains and commanders continue to navigate recent policy changes, such as same-sex marriage, but have not expressed a difficulty in doing so. The group felt that social media and rumors were the source of most misinformation, and these create constant challenges to keep the chaplains properly informed of the facts. I am and continue to be most impressed with our military chaplaincy. Although a small sampling, my direct communication with the chaplains reinforced what the service chiefs of chaplains have been telling us, that they have open communication with their chaplains, and that their chaplains are not concerned regarding the free exercise or expression of their faiths. If an incident does occur, they are confident it will be worked appropriately. Your concern for our chaplains gave me the idea to pulse the field for direct feedback. As we continue to pulse the field, another form will be the survey as directed by the 2014 NDAA. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you and the distinguished members of this subcommittee for your strong advocacy on behalf of the men and women of the Department of Defense and your steadfast support for military chaplaincy. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. And Captain Tidd?
Chairman Wilson, Ranking Member Davis, and esteemed members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to address how the chaplaincies of the military departments support the religious and spiritual needs of our people. With my colleagues here, we're members of the Armed Forces Chaplains Board, and together we do have a few decades of experience in military ministry, and that's been our privilege and honor. Part of the genius of the American way is that we are committed to recognizing that each person has the right to determine his or her own deepest convictions, including one's religious convictions. As chaplains, we work together cooperatively to meet the religious needs of as many of our people as we can, always guided by the teachings of our religious bodies. And we care for all with dignity and respect and compassion, whatever their religious beliefs. For many of our people, religious faith is an essential component, even the foundation of their resilience in the face of adversity. Chaplains bring a message of hope for all who seek our support, often in times of our deepest human need. Chaplains oversee religious ministries around the globe, aboard ships at sea, in battalions and brigades, on flight lines, in our installation chapels, in military hospitals, and in combat. These ministries build resilience, and they help our people to be ready to meet the demands of military service. We also act as advisors to commanders on unit morale, on morals and ethics, and on the free exercise of religion. In the last 8 months, the chiefs of chaplains have communicated with our chaplains to reaffirm the protections afforded them by the Constitution, by law, and by policy when performing their religious ministry. We've also provided guidance on ways to resolve issues that they might face in providing religious ministry. When we're made aware of a situation that appears to challenge the religious freedom of service members, including chaplains, we are eager to step forward to help resolve it. We expect our chaplains to be guided by the teachings of their religious bodies, to work together, and to provide outstanding religious ministry that includes responsive pastoral care. Our chaplains are meeting the religious needs of our people around the world to the greatest extent possible. Again, Chairman Wilson, Ranking Member Davis, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. We look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much, Chaplain Tidd, and we now proceed to Right Reverend Magness.
With you. Based upon my service, now in 1976, my Navy enlisted service, I stood before a Navy officer to take the solemn oath of office as a Navy Chaplain Corps officer. Instinctively, I knew that when I took the commissioning oath, I was committing myself as never before to serve our servicemen and women. Not only was I taking this oath as an officer, I was making the pledge that I would support their rights that are guaranteed by the First Amendment to the Constitution. I have learned that the military chaplain may at times be required to place the needs and rights of the service member ahead of his or her own needs and rights. I've learned that as a religious leader, the ministry of a military chaplain is in some very significant ways different from that of their civilian counterparts. Normally, a civilian religious leader is only responsible for and accountable to the congregation to which called, whereas the military chaplain has a far broader set of responsibilities. These responsibilities are to care for America's sons and daughters who come from every sector of this country. During my first active duty assignment as a chaplain, I learned a meaningful lesson when I was asked to participate in a retirement ceremony and offer prayers for the retiree, a Navy captain in the Dental Corps. Using my distinctively Christian Book of Common Prayer, I created a prayer which, as I recall, ended with these words, "Through Jesus Christ our Lord." Later, the retiring officer came up to me to thank me for being available to assist, and then in a calm and reasoned way said to me, "You might want to know that all the members of my family and I who are present here today are practicing Jews." It didn't take me long to realize that I had just excluded and offended the honoree and all the members of his family by offering an inappropriate prayer. I learned that when in uniform, my responsibility is to care for all those who are present, not just those of my own faith tradition, for all people, Christian, Jew, Muslim, non-theist, straight, gay, or lesbian, all people. I tell this story because in a number of ways it gets to the heart of the subject of this hearing. I believe that the current law and Department of Defense policies provide more than adequate guidance in matters of religious accommodation for service members and chaplains alike. I am satisfied that when there have been instances of religious discrimination, the service leaders have invariably taken swift and appropriate action to ensure that fairness and equality and mission accomplishment are all held in a productive balance. In today's very complex social and cultural environment, I believe that the service leaders are doing a splendid job of using existing law and policy and finding creative ways to ensure universal religious accommodation for all people. Thank you for having the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you very much. And as we proceed, David Giacchetti is going to be maintaining a 3-minute rule, including on me. And I'm so grateful that we've had so many colleagues who wanted to be here today because this issue is so important. And indeed, Chaplain Tidd, I think it confirms what you said, that the chaplaincy is an essential component of military service. And for our family, my oldest son served for a year in Iraq, and his roommate was Chaplain Steve Shugart. We learned firsthand what extraordinary service and how meaningful that is for our military service members. Ms. Penrod, what was the delay in publishing the implementing instruction enacting this legislation, and why was the provision on chaplains not included in the published instruction?
Well, thank you for those questions, Mr. Chairman. We were actually in the process of publishing our instruction that included accommodation of religious practices in the military services. That particular instruction includes the protection of rights of all our service members, which includes our chaplains. It takes anywhere between 9 months to 18 months to publish an instruction in the department, although not ideal. I'll be the first to criticize the process. However, when the law was changed in 2013, we decided to include the change in law in that instruction, which required us to pull the instruction and begin the process over. So there was a delay. We're not pleased with the delay, but we did want to include the change as far as it pertained to all our service members. The specific section of law, 533B, that pertains to chaplains will be included in a different instruction. That one is the guidance for appointment of our chaplains. That instruction is under revision, and we are pushing hard to have that completed by the summer.
And so you would anticipate completion by July 1?
I would not want to give a specific date, Mr. Chairman, but our goal is to have it this summer.
And as soon as possible is just so helpful to our military. Additionally, how long do the services have to publish their companion regulations on this issue, and will the department be able to meet the 90-day deadline to publish further implementing regulations as required by the FY14 National Defense Authorization Act?
I can leave it to the chaplains to speak to the specific instructions, but I believe they have already put out a guidance through memos and emails to the field so that they know that these changes are in place.
And for everyone, again, I appreciate you being here, but you can tell the members of Congress are vitally interested. Our constituents, service members, military families, veterans, are vitally interested in your input and your service, and that's why, to me, this is a record turnout at any subcommittee and truly a reflection of the concern of the people of our country about supporting the service of our chaplains. I now turn to Congresswoman Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Penrod, I wanted to turn to you again, please. I understand that the department has investigated allegations of chaplains being required to perform duties inconsistent with the tenets of their faith, but have not been able to substantiate those claims. Is that correct?
Yes, Congresswoman Davis, that I cannot speak to specific cases, but to my knowledge, we've not had instances where we could pinpoint a specific chaplain that has complained or provided evidence that they have been forced to provide a sermon or attend a ceremony or oversee a ceremony that went against the dictates of their particular religion.
Thank you. I wonder also then that if the department or the services track complaints by service members who were subject to inappropriate proselytizing by other service members or by military chaplains. Do we know anything about that?
Chairman Davis, I would need to defer to our chaplains to speak to any specifics.
Ma'am, we have not received those kinds of complaints. That's not something that we've been tracking, but we're certainly very sensitive to those and eager to get information on that if that is the case.
But to your knowledge, there haven't been any that have come to you or to others who have spoken with you?
Not to my knowledge, ma'am.
It's the same with the Army, ma'am. There's no complaints that we've received, nor have we have any accumulation of those complaints, but we are sensitive to that and monitoring constantly any issues that are out there.
That would also be true for the Air Force. It's something very, very important to us that all airmen are free to practice their faith, and I'm not aware of any cases where airmen are complaining about or alleging that they've been mistreated for lack of faith or disagreeing with someone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And Bishop Magness, if I could turn to you. And I appreciate the story that you shared with us. One of the, could you talk to us a little bit more about how you feel that allowing sectarian prayers at military ceremonies would harm unit cohesion and other important goals and laws that we have?
Yes, thank you for the question, Congresswoman Davis. And I base most of this on my own experience, both as a practitioner of religion within the Department of Defense and also as one who had occasion to supervise a large number of chaplains from time to time. The issue of good order and discipline and unit cohesion is incredibly important, and when we find ourselves offending others by the use of sectarian prayers, that has a significant negative impact upon good order, discipline, and unit cohesion. In the case that I cited with this Navy captain in the Dental Corps, he certainly was of senior rank and able to come forward and state his complaint. And I was a lieutenant, Navy lieutenant at the time. However, in other cases, I fear that those who feel that they have their rights violated and have intrusive prayers offered with them, sectarian prayers, will not come forward. They don't feel the opportunity to come forward. They don't feel that they have a voice in the organization because of their situation, place in the system in which they participate. So I think unit cohesion is incredibly important in this issue.
Thank you. My time is up.
And thank you, Ms. Davis. And indeed, the significance of appreciation of chaplains is indicated. We've been joined by the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Buck McKeon of California. So, Chairman McKeon, thank you for being here. We proceed now to Congressman Dr. Joe Heck of Nevada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Ms. Penrod, chaplains, Right Reverend. Thank you all for being here to talk about this important issue. And as we can see, it's also not just a big issue from the sake of the chaplaincy, but also for the Sikh community. Several members are present here today. And Ms. Penrod, I know that the DODI 1300.17 was recently revised, but it's my understanding that there's still within the DODI a presumptive ban on members of the Sikh religion from joining, from having to give up their articles of faith, from having to seek an accommodation every time they have a change of assignment, and whether or not there's still some question as if they are allowed to assess into the service, whether or not they have to stop wearing their headgear or shave while going through boot camp until an accommodation is granted. Could you please explain why there remains the presumptive ban? I know previously I served with Colonel Seacon, who was one of the trailblazers when he was commander of the 349th Cache, and seemed to be able to overcome every obstacle that the military tried to put in his way from effective service. I'm curious why the DODI still maintains those bans.
It's good to see you again, Dr. Heck. What the what the changes do, it tries to balance the need, or provides the service the ability to balance the needs of the service member with the needs of against mission accomplishment. What we've done is decisions relating to any waiver of a regulation or policy that pertains to uniform, wear of religious articles of clothing, is now elevated to the service secretary and cannot be delegated below a 3-star level. So it is at a very high level, and the decision we've delegated that to service, and the reason behind that is the service is in the best position to determine their readiness needs, to determine unit cohesion, safe and healthy health of not only the individual but the unit. The service has a responsibility, though, to look at the request of the individual, and it has to be a compelling governmental interest before they make that decision. They will look at the facts, they will look at precedents in making that decision. So that's what we've done in this particular DOTI.
But does it still require, correct me if I'm wrong, but does it still require a new waiver every time there's a change of assignment? Even if it's now elevated to the 3-star level, you would think that that would carry through in the person's lifetime of service as opposed to every time they change assignment.
Well, Dr. Heck, when you look at military readiness, each unit of assignment has a different responsibility. The service has to make that determination if now this new position or new job that the individual would be performing impacts safety, health, the unit, they may deny the accommodation.
Understand, I know we're short on time today because of compressed time frame. I'd like to discuss this more offline with you, and we can kind of do a bigger deep dive into this issue. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yield back.
Thank you, Dr. Heck. We now proceed to Congressman Dr. Brad Winstrup of Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I've found that when I served in theater in Iraq that, you know, there was definitely an effort by the chaplain to be respectful of all religions. And I found that our chaplain was able to provide compassion and comfort for anyone who was in need, even if they were non-believers of any type. And I think that that's an effective role of a chaplain. And I think chaplains display a tremendous ability to be accommodating. You know, I'm not offended by anyone praying in their own way. That doesn't bother me. Some people do get offended if someone is praying in a different way. I don't really have a question today, but I would caution us as we proceed just to recognize that there's a fine line between accommodating and respecting all religions and restricting religious freedom. And that's the line that we're walking on here. And I think we have to be very cautious, and I hope that we are going in the right direction in trying to accomplish that. And I thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Dr. Winstrup. We now proceed to Congressman Austin Scott of Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I share the same concerns that my colleague Dr. Winstrup shares. I have a specific question, though. As a Christian, I'm very respectful of other people's right to practice their faith. We have a First Amendment in this country. It's what our country was founded on the first, protected by the second. And it seems that in the military, people of my faith can get reprimanded for a statement as simple as one saying that my priorities in life are a commitment to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, a commitment to my family, and a commitment to my country in that order. I'm aware of a colonel that got reprimanded in a change of command for saying that on stage. He didn't say that anybody in the crowd had to believe as he did or share his priorities. And my question is, can you give me any example of a person of a faith other than a Christian faith where they were reprimanded for a statement that was that simple?
Congressman, thank you for your question. I cannot give you an example of anyone that was reprimanded for expressing their religious belief, because along with religion, there is free speech. We become concerned in the department if an individual is coercing any other individual or impacting unit cohesion. Again, I can defer to the chiefs of chaplains if they know of any instance, but I do not know.
Well, ma'am, if I may, we know of instances where Christians have been reprimanded for statements as simple as that. Are you saying that you know that there are no other instances of people of any other faith?
I know of no instances of any faith. If you do have examples, the department would be more than willing to look into specific examples.
We will get you that information, and I would ask for the different branches if they would to. This was an Air Force colonel that the reprimand came to. If each of you would speak briefly to that, I've got 30 seconds.
Sir, I'm not aware of any of those instances.
Also, I'm not aware either, sir, but also that there was an instance, possibly, a chaplain would be there to advise the command that that was a wrong procedure to go out.
Thank you for bringing up this issue. Commanders are also airmen. Airmen are free to practice their faith. In order for the airmen under that commander, under any person of authority, to practice their faith, it's necessary that the commander, as the agent of the government, if you will, exercise some discretion and some wisdom in what she would do, so that the people under her, would be able to practice their faith. So as long as the person of authority, as long as it's clear that what he is saying is personal and not official, not an expectation, he's free to practice his faith and speak of his faith.
My time has expired. Thank you, and we will get you a copy of the reprimand if he will share it with us. It's clearly biased.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. We now proceed to Congressman Dr. John Fleming of Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I ask questions, I'd like to address the chair, if I could. First of all, we have about an hour for a subject that could go on for days. I'm very concerned about that. We have many members here who are not even on the subcommittee, which again shows you how much interest there is. There's a long line outside down the hallway. And so what I'd like to say, that first of all, is that we definitely need to repeat this hearing, and perhaps at the full committee level. So I would ask that. Secondly, just to begin my questions here, in terms, if you do want to know about the problems that we're seeing with religious liberty, all you have to do is go to Clear and Present Danger. It's an FRC website. There's a huge tabulation that has occurred over recent years. I've spoken with the head chaplain of the Air Force. I've made him aware of this. And again, I'm disappointed that we don't have General Boykin and others who can actually tell us about all of these problems. But let me say this. I feel very good about the fact that there's not been a single complaint or problematic complaint with proselytizing. Yet we hear from our sectarian atheist friends that that is a huge problem in the military. And that's the reason why we have to change the culture of the military. So if people are free to express their religious beliefs, why do we have a growing number of complaints? And again, I won't go into those, but I would refer to that website because of lack of time. Here's my question, Ms. Penrod. You know, last week, DOD issued an instruction, 1300.17, regarding the accommodation of religious practices within the military services. Were these revisions the Department's official response to the congressional requests in the NDA 2013 and or 2014?
Congressman, thank you for that question. The accommodation, the DOD, is the official document that includes the changes in law in 2013, 2014.
Okay. In the FY14 NDAA, language was included that says, quote, in prescribing such regulations, the Secretary shall consult with the official military faith group representatives who endorse military chaplains, end quote. Did the DOD comply with the FY14 NDAA by consulting with the official military faith group representatives in formulating this instruction?
The instruction was under revision as the law was being deliberated. Actually, it was pretty much completed. However, we had the opportunity on January 16th to meet with over 100 religious endorsers.
Well, I'm running out of time. Just to make it clear, the answer to that is no.
No, the answer is yes.
It is no, and that's why we need more hearings, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Dr. Fleming. Congressman Doug Lamburn of Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You all know, I'm sure, excuse me, of Chaplain Dale Getz, who died in Afghanistan. I have legislation to name a post office in his memory. If and when that day arrives, I would like to invite you all to help memorialize that occasion and to honor his memory. So please be aware of that. Chaplain Tidd, do you agree that chaplains should be free to prepare and deliver sermons or teachings according to the faith traditions of their endorsing agency without interference from a commander?
Sir, that's correct. That's our policy and that's our practice.
And would anyone disagree with that answer he gave? Okay, thank you. Chaplain Page, should chaplains be free to write public essays about a faith's teaching and the tenets of their personal faith in particular?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And would anyone disagree with that answer? Thank you. For any one of you, chaplains are not only members of the armed forces, but also representatives of faith groups and accountable to an endorsing agency that holds to specific faith tenets. If the chain of command has veto power over the content of religious speech in the military, would the core of the chaplaincy be compromised? Chaplain Tidd.
Sir, as we've discussed, it's hard for me to conceive that the chain of command would want to have veto power, particularly over a sermon, a Bible study, teaching like that. So that's just not part of who we are as a military as well as our chaplain.
And that situation would be unacceptable in your opinion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Should DOD policy determine in any way what is an acceptable body of moral or religious beliefs to discuss, teach, or share in the military? Ms. Penrod.
No.
Okay, thank you. And would anyone disagree with her answer? Okay. Lastly, it is our understanding that additional regulations regarding chaplains are forthcoming. Will you commit to come back before the committee and discuss these regulations? Ms.
Yes.
Penrod?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Thank you all very much for your answers, and thank you for being here. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Lamburn. We now proceed to Congressman Trent Franks of Arizona.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all of you so much for being here. You know, it's my contention that those who defend our country are the most noble figures in society. And often in the process of doing that, they put themselves at mortal risk. And it's also my contention that part of military efficiency and cohesion and capability is rooted in their own ability to have refuge in their own faith when they face death for all of us. And it is not a small issue, and it's not just a religious freedom issue. This is about a military capability, that we protect religious freedom. And religious freedom goes to the very heart of who we are as a people and as a nation. And in terms of when prayers are written by some commanding officer or something like that, you understand the danger that if we have to proscribe or prescribe any prayer to the chaplain or someone that has dedicated their life to a particular tenet of faith, it can vitiate the entire reason that they pursue this entire impetus. And I was struck by Reverend Magness's comments, and very respectful of it, but was struck by it. If the people that had approached you had said, well, we're atheists and we're offended by any prayer, would that have motivated you to say, well, we won't pray at all? And my question here to all of you is that when it comes to prayers that chaplains make before an official crowd or anything else, is there anything in the military code or anything in the practice of the military or anything in the anticipated regulations that would prohibit a prayer that, say, if it's a Christian prayer in Jesus' name like you mentioned, or if it was a Jewish prayer in some other way, would there be anything anticipated or anything in the military code that would prohibit any person officially or quasi-officially from being able to pray in a public setting, even in an official setting, according to the tenets of their faith. It's a specific question. If it's all right, Ms. Penrod, I'll talk to you and then just go down the line here.
Yes, Congressman. There's absolutely nothing in policy or code that prohibits a chaplain from praying according to the dictates of their faith.
And Chaplain Tidd, would you agree with that?
Yes, sir. Chaplains are always free to pray according to the manner and forms of their religious organizations. We also, as a matter of practice, understand that not every setting is a worship service. And so we're free to work within the parameters of our religious traditions to pray in a way that's meaningful for that particular group.
But any reports of people being said that, you know, in the case of Reverend Magness, it was voluntary on his part, but any reports of anyone saying, no, you cannot pray in that way, or there anything anticipated in the regulations?
Sir, I'm not aware of that. If a chaplain feels that they can't pray in a way that would be meaningful for that group, they always have the opportunity to respectfully withdraw from that with no kind of retribution. The commander is also free to choose any chaplain that the commander would like to offer a prayer.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Congressman Franks. And we now proceed to a brand new member of Congress, Brad Byrne of Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Bishop Magness, I wonder if I could start with you. Just so you know, I'm a cradle-to-grave Episcopalian and the nephew of an Episcopal priest who was a chaplain. And I was struck by your comments, and I want to make sure that we give you an opportunity to clarify them if you need to. Many of our prayers in the Book of Common Prayer end with that simple statement, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Do you feel like that there are times for you or for other chaplains when you feel inhibited in being able to invoke the name of Jesus or invoke the name of God because of a particular thing that's in the code or just because of a practice in the military?
Thank you for the question. Speaking personally for myself, I never felt that I was inhibited in any way as a military chaplain from praying in any particular way, nor do I think there should be any policy that prohibits that. This is a matter of education and training. We train chaplains and continue to train chaplains, as I train our Episcopal priests, to be able to understand and learn and read situations, to know the distinctions between a religious service and a command function, and to know that in certain settings certain things are appropriate and other settings they're not. That they can be offensive. One of the things we do in the Episcopal Church when we take our baptismal vows is to say that we will respect the dignity of every human being. I take that very seriously, and I expect my chaplains to take that very seriously. And I will not restrict them from praying in any way that they want to or need to at any particular place, yet to be mindful that they have an effect as a command leader upon the dignity of everyone who's there with them.
And if you know that there is, if you're speaking to an audience that includes people who happen to be Jewish, you know that there may be an appropriate way to state your prayer that is in keeping with your own faith and with their faith as well.
Yes. I believe that there are a lot of different ways to pray. I don't think that from my own personal preference that the ending subscription in Jesus' name always has to be there. In fact, not every prayer I pray always has that at the end.
And I wonder if I could direct this to you, Ms. Penrod. My uncle told me the first time I ever heard it that there's no such thing as atheists in foxholes. Maybe we have them today, but during World War II and the aftermath of that, he didn't feel that way. Do you think it's appropriate for our chaplains to be able to witness to the men and women in our armed services when they're going through these difficult times, and to witness in a personal way, not just in some sort of an abstract way, but to personally witness to them?
So what the department believes is that all members have the right to practice according to the tenets of the religion or no religion. If an individual is comfortable with that, absolutely.
By an individual, you mean a chaplain as well, not just the individual serviceman or woman.
Absolutely. And if the individual is uncomfortable with the chaplain praying to them, later they can address that with the chaplain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Byrne. We now proceed to Congressman Rob Whitman of Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our panelists for joining us today. Ms. Penrod, I want to begin with you. Can you give me some perspective about the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute and what they use as a metric in communicating to units out in the field? And can you tell me, do they consider the Southern Poverty Law Center's list of hate groups to be a reliable indicator of extremist groups in the United States?
Well, Congressman, thank you for that question. That organization is out of the preview of my responsibility. I will need to take that for the record.
Okay. Because my concern is that as these groups have been identified as extremist groups, they include some religious groups, which to me is very troubling. Can you tell me if there are any steps in the plan that the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute puts out that determines recommended resources for EO trainers for further study to look at how they identify these extremist groups and whether they do include religious groups that I think do intersect into the idea of religious freedom by identifying certain groups on a very subjective basis and how that's communicated out into the field with EO trainers?
Again, Congressman, I would need to get the specifics for you, and so I'll take that for the record.
Okay. Let me ask you, this was specific to the Army and how the Army was communicating as to whether certain religious groups were extremist groups. Has the Army made any changes to training or anything that they're doing as far as identifying religious groups as extremist groups and how they train their men and women?
I will defer to Chaplain Bailey.
Chaplain Bailey?
Yes, sir. Thank you. They have stopped all training and have revised the training package to ensure that all the information is correct. The incident you're talking about was an isolated case in which information was brought in from an outside source. It was a mistake. It was quickly corrected at the time.
Okay. So that has been corrected. I understand that those training courses were stopped in order for this to be considered. So what you're saying is changes have been made. Are the new training courses now being reinstituted? Are trainers now continuing with that EO training based on a new directive from the Army?
Sir, it's outside my perimeter of the information. However, I understand that they have stopped that. They have got better information in, and they're starting the training back up again with the correct information.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Whitman. We now proceed to a very proud military dad, Congressman Rich Nugent of Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I certainly do thank our chaplains for your service to this country, and particularly to our service members. You know, much has been made about our military's role in religion, and there are those who argue it's the responsibility of the military to promote religious values, specifically Christian values. Others argue it's the responsibility of the military to create a purely secular environment where no person would ever be exposed to religious beliefs or that challenge their own. I'm a father of 3 sons currently serving in the United States Army, and I'm a Christian. I believe it's the military's responsibility to provide for the spiritual needs of warfighters of any faith. The dedicated chaplains and support assistants meet that need everywhere our armed services are in the world. Would you please confirm with me, or confirm to me, the military's level of commitment to religious need of all personnel while validating the following facts? The Air Force had 2,472 chaplains and 3,344 enlisted assistants who have served since the program was created in 1975. 1,870 chaplains and assistants currently serve today in the Air Force. 2 died while deployed. The Navy, the total number of chaplains that could not be found, but the largest chaplain corps has ever been, was 1,487 serving during the same time during World War II. Today, 2,042 chaplains and assistants serve currently. 15 chaplains died while deployed, and 2 chaplains received the Medal of Honor. In the Army, more than 25,000 chaplains and assistants have served in the Army. 6,400 chaplains and assistants currently serve. 300 have died while deployed, and 6 chaplains received the Medal of Honor. I just want to make sure that the commitment of the armed services is to provide for that spiritual need of any service member within any of the organizations. That commitment still stands today, I think, by the numbers. Would you agree with those numbers? I know you may not know specifically the numbers, but in general terms.
Sir, I would say for the Navy, that's roughly right, and I would have to check on the specifics, but absolutely our commitment is strong to honoring the religious and spiritual values of our people and supporting the religious and spiritual values of all of our people.
And it's not just to spiritual values, I would think, from my time when I was in basic training and my sons who are currently serve, it really is to minister to any. It matters not if they have a religious affiliation. They're there as a counselor and a shoulder to or lean on and talk to get help if necessary. And so I do appreciate all that the chaplains do. It is a huge service to this country and to our war fighters, and please continue. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman Nugent. We now proceed to Congressman Mike Rogers of Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Penrod, late last year, I had a young woman in my district. I have a VA hospital down near Montgomery, Alabama. Young woman made homemade cookies and packaged them up to take to the VA hospital, a couple hundred packages, to give to some of the veterans in the hospital in honor of her late grandfather. But when she arrived at the VA hospital, she was denied the ability to hand out those cookies because the packaging had the word Christmas on it. While this incident occurred in a VA hospital, I'm curious if there had been a DOD facility. Do y'all have a policy that would prevent somebody from doing something for our men and women in the troop in service if a word Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever was on the packaging?
We do not have such policy.
Thanks. On another subject, current DOD policy states that service members can share their faith or evangelize, but must not force unwanted intrusive attempts to convert others of any faith or no faith to one's beliefs. My question is, who makes the determination of the relative comfort of others, and what's the practical application of that policy?
I will defer to our chiefs of chaplains.
Okay.
Sir, as we share our faith, as service members share our faith, we're always open to do that. It's always an option for us to do that, and to do so respectfully and gracefully. And that's something that's worked out between the individuals. If an individual says, thanks, I'm not interested, that's an appropriate time for the other person to step back. If they say, I'd like to hear more about that, then absolutely we continue.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Congressman Rogers. We now proceed to Congresswoman Vicki Hartzler of Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week, the DOD issued an instruction indicating that it's DOD policy that religious expression of service members should be accommodated as reiterated in the NDAA. And of course, the intent is that expression is not just a belief, but it's also in practice. So my question is, and I guess I'll start with General Bailey, can you give me examples of an expression of religious belief, whether verbal or nonverbal, that is considered to be borderline inappropriate?
Thank you, ma'am. I would think that a statement that would indicate that their religious beliefs are better or more have more importance than another belief system, and how they would phrase something like that, and state that in some sort of way that they're a God or their higher being that they call would be something that is the supreme over anything else, where it may be that would suppress another individual to think that they are not less in their faith. That would be a wrong statement to make in that sense.
Here's an example. So the respectful expression of an individual's conscious or religious belief while engaging in personal conversation in public space would be considered inappropriate. So if you said, I believe I'm a Christian because of this reason, and that would entail as a faith that you believe he's the Son of God and all of that. So you couldn't get into that without reprimand?
No, ma'am. That's perfectly okay for the individual to state what they believe openly, understanding who's around the area. That is a private conversation within their own convictions of what they believe. When it is in conflict with those around that is denouncing them or in intruding on them, then there's a sensitivity there that we have to try to help that individual understand through training and through other means like that. But they're never told they cannot share their own personal faith of any sort. What we try to do, though, for the discipline purposes, is to understand that every faith has to be respected and dignified, as well as those who have no faith whatsoever. So you must state your faith in a sense that, and hopefully they will, in a sense of that respect, but never suppressed in any sort of way.
I think that's a fine line, that it is important to be sensitive to others, but I just hope through your training it doesn't result in suppression of that, because that's very important. How about an invitation from one service member to another to attend a Bible study or other religious function? Would that be inappropriate? No, ma'am, not whatsoever. A religious text or symbol that is visible in a commanding officer's office? No, ma'am. A commanding officer could have whatever he has on his desk, a Bible or a Quran or where it may be. That is up to him. That's his own individual conviction where it may be. However, the chaplain, that's what our role is, to advise the commander of the impact that would have or possibly any repercussions of that. The commander will make a wise decision at that point, understanding his or her role as a leader of all faiths in that regard of religious accommodation or the lack of faith, whatever may be the choices of the service member they lead. So that would be their individual right. Right. Thank you. Time's up.
Thank you, Ms. Horsley. We now proceed to Congressman Tim Hulskamp of Kansas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly appreciate the ability to be here today. Appreciate the leadership on on this committee. First question I would have, and I believe one of the colleagues here had asked all the above in terms of sermons, whether or not folks should be able to preach, chaplains preach what they believe in a particular homily or sermon, and perhaps for the right reverend, are there any cases in which the military has censored in advance anything you anticipated to preach?
Neither has that been the case in my experience, nor has it been the case with any of my chaplains who serve around this globe in all the services.
And as I understand from the others, that was a pretty firm commitment that doesn't happen. But one instance I would like to refer to that I was worried about, and I believe General Bailey might be able to address this. January of 2012, every Catholic chaplain in the Army was forbidden to use one particular sentence in a sermon that every other Catholic across the country was allowed to hear. Do you not consider that censorship? And exactly, can you describe how that decision was made by which that was a forbidden sentence in our to be uttered by our Catholic chaplains?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. At the time, if I believe, the endorsing agency for the Roman Catholic Church bishop had put out a letter to all to be read or sermonized into all the Roman Catholic services throughout the military, the Department of Defense at that time. Our chief of chaplains at that time went to our Judge Admiral General, screening that letter as properly to be done, to look at, to make sure that it is in good order and discipline, that it would not go against the chain of command, things of this nature that we're supposed to do, to ensure that we do say the right things in that regard. And so through that means and through that mechanisms, the one sentence that was said would be misconstrued and possibly from the judicial perspective, in that sense, and from chain of command. That information was fed back to the Roman Catholic Church to understand that that would not be. In fact, the Roman Catholic endorser met with the Secretary of the Army over that issue, and they discussed it, and it was agreed to that it was not to be used, as well as that the letter be read by every Roman Catholic priest to their congregates in the sense that they all know what's being said by their endorser. So all the information was let out to the people.
Well, sir, the last sentence, not all information, the one sentence was stricken in every Catholic chaplain's homily, in every military base in this country is understood, do you not think that's censorship?
No, sir, I don't. What I do believe is that we worked with the bishop's office to understand that that one sentence was not the intent of the bishop, what he was trying to say, and because of the culture of the military, it being misconstrued against the president, against all what's going on at that time.
Well, sir, in my definition of censorship, when the government demands something not be said and forces that, again, every Catholic in America heard that one sentence unless you were in an Army installation at Catholic Mass. And so I'm very frustrated by that, frustrated by your response. And the fact is, I believe that's censorship. And I would love to discuss at length why that sentence was problematic to you and not problematic to every other Catholic in this country. And I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hulskamp. And as we proceed, votes have been called, but fortunately we have time for our last member. I'm delighted at the number of persons who are here. And Dr. Fleming, I agree with you that this issue is so important. We will be having another hearing, and it would fit right into when the companion regulations are released within the next 60 days. So this shall occur, and thank you again, Dr. Fleming, for your passion on this issue. We'll be concluding with Congressman Alan Nunley of Mississippi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having this hearing and for allowing me, a non-member of the committee, to be a part of it. Ms. Penrod, I want to follow up with a line of questions from Mr. Whitman, specifically concerning the equal opportunity, the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute. Mr. Whitman's questions were asked, and we get the same answer we continually get, and that is, this is an isolated incident, it'll not happen again, and then it happens again. Just a quick chronology of a couple of events. April of 2013, a Pennsylvania Army Reserve Unit, evangelical Christians are examples of religious extremists. Catholics are equated to the Ku Klux Klan, Al-Qaeda, and Hamas. Fall of 2013, Fort Hood, same institute. Christians are a threat to the nation, and any soldier that donates to these groups will be subject to punishment under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. October of 2013, similar statements at Camp Shelby. December of 2013, soldiers were told, don't use the word Christmas. Might be offensive. The Army's investigated these. What is the purpose of these equal opportunity briefings? Who thought it was a good idea to have these briefings, and what has been done to those that made the decision to have such briefings?
Well, Congressman, again, I do not have the specifics of those cases. I will need to get that for the record for you.
Mr. Chairman, if we could have a follow-up hearing and have representative from this Department of Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute, I think it would be most helpful.
Well, thank you, Congressman Nunley. And as we proceed with the additional hearing, any suggestions anyone has, please let me know. Ms. Davis, do you have any concluding comments? Again, thank you all for being here. I think you can see the interest and appreciation of chaplains. That's why you had a record turnout in terms of members of Congress who came, who were profoundly and very positively concerned, but also supportive of our chaplains in the U.S. military. We are adjourned.